Good morning and welcome, everyone. So, first of all, I want to thank you for coming, and I also want to recognize and acknowledge there are many elected officials and dignitaries here today, whether it be from our friends in law enforcement, whether it be from our city council. I want to thank and recognize you for being here today, both from Sacramento County and also from Yolo County and specifically West Sacramento as well. So today we will be celebrating the 24th Annual Sacramento District Attorney's Office Outstanding Citizen Award Ceremony and the Beacon of Hope. And with that in mind, I want to note that this week is a special week, because this week we are celebrating this as part of National Crime Victims' Rights Week. And with that in mind, the theme for today is going to be Survivor Voices. We want to elevate, engage, and effectuate change. And specifically with that, what we are trying to do is making sure that we create a community and a justice system that ensures that our victims and survivors of crime are believed, supported, and protected. And so this week is meant to highlight that very aspect. Now, in order for us to do our job as prosecutors, whether it's in the courtroom, the classroom, the executive room, whether it's behind closed doors, or whether it's out in the open, we could not do that job without the support of so many people. And some of those people I want to recognize is our victim advocates. Our victim advocates at the District Attorney's Office, they have a master's in social work, and they are simply miracle workers. They are headed by our program manager, Darby Geller, and each and every one of them, if you are a prosecutor over the years, you've worked with them, whether it's a homicide case, a sex case, or even a vehicular manslaughter case that is a misdemeanor. We could not do that work without your help. You are there with us, behind the scene, hand in hand, working with our survivors and our victims. I also want to recognize as well another group of people, and that is a coalition known as the Voices for Victims Coalition. Many of them are watching remotely right now online, and I want to thank them. The Voices for Victims Coalition, their purpose is to advocate on behalf of victims, making sure that their voices are heard, that they are never forgotten. And they are here with us in person and also remotely as well. I also want to recognize that as part of a coalition here today, we have with us, and you can see it virtually here, our memory quilts. These quilts, if you see, represent and they show victims who have lost their lives to violent crime. And we have them here to recognize and to remember them. And that's what it's about. At the end of the day, our job as a prosecutor, as a district attorney, is to make sure that the voices of victims are heard and that you obtain a measure of justice. Now, the awards that are being presented today, the Outstanding Citizen Award and the Beacon of Hope Award. You know, the other day, 2 days ago to be specific, we awarded and we honored the Prosecutor of the Year Award. And during that ceremony, an old friend, Rob Gold, was there, and he introduced Matt Chisholm. And one of the things that Rob mentioned was that that particular award is not won, but rather it is earned. It is earned through sacrifice. And the same way these awards are earned through sacrifice. Sacrifice to our system of justice, sacrifice in terms of dedication to victims and to our community. And the first such award, the Outstanding Citizen Award, in particular, is represented by the fact that this individual had to overcome great obstacles, had to overcome great struggle to either testify or participate in the system or to protect victims. And so with that, I am going to introduce Supervising District Attorney Chris Orr, who will present and introduce the first recipient of that award. So Chris, come on up.
All right, I'm going to invite Angela Wilder to come down, and she's going to have her kind of crew that helped her through this adventure come up too. So I'd invite Detective Barry and Detective Rhoda come down. They were support people for her throughout this ordeal that she helped and went through. So I'll have you guys come up here and evil does exist. It unfortunately can exist as the man who takes a girl in after her father dies, the guy who charms a young girl and to date her and then attempts to involve her in the exploitation of children. Evil can be where a person preys on parents who want their children to be successful in a modeling or photography career. He then lures those parents and children to do naked, exploitative photography and ultimately inappropriate touching of children. This is the story of John Michael Leonard. Mr. Leonard literally wrote the book on child molestation. His wake of children dates back more than 2.5 decades. In 1995, he began his tear, befriended and ultimately dated a teen, telling her his fantasies of having children who he could inappropriately touch. For the next 5 years, he did inappropriate activities. When his first victim left him, he found another young woman to befriend and had used her to help lure in others into his home. He convinced children and parents he was a photographer. His lies were eventually investigated, and at least 5 children were victimized by his inappropriate actions. Unfortunately, the federal government felt they could not prove child pornography charges. Mr. Leonard was convicted in state court for minor sexual exploitive charges. Mr. Leonard had testified in state court at the trial and convinced his jury that the greater charges were not true. This convicted sex offender resumed his ways, holding book clubs at the local round table pizza with young girls, engaging in fantasy role play that blurred lines for children between fun and molest. In 2008, he was investigated, and in 2013, he was investigated yet again. But Mr. Leonard was again able to justify his actions as innocent. His art in his home had removable clothing that he'd put up and down when the investigators would come around. In that time, Mr. Leonard used other young women to lure others into his home. He used photography, body art, body painting, water fights, and even dress up to justify his actions to inappropriately touch children. He befriended those needing school tutoring and those recovering from health issues. And when I say he wrote the book on child molest, he actually has a published book about mythical fairies and how they will look, how these young fairies look like they're 8 years old but are really 200 years old, and they want to ravage a man whose name mirrors Mr. Leonard's. The children in that fantasy world vote to lower the age of consent. Mr. Leonard peddled this book to teenage girls to review and made offers that they could receive credit for their part in his publishing. Mr. Leonard sought out dancers to film inappropriate dances, and realizing that he needed to lure girls to believe that his actions were benign, he realized that he needed to have someone else besides him do the photography and filming. And that is where our outstanding citizen comes in. Sacramento is known for its cutting-edge technology to solve crimes. Our county and our district attorney's office has been on the cutting edge of DNA. We innovated investigative genetic genealogy to solve cases like the East Area Rapist and NorCal Rapist. We use ring cameras, cell phones, and other cutting-edge methods to solve crime. But sometimes the best way to solve crimes is when our citizens speak up. When you see evil, you speak up. And that is what happened in this case. Angela Wilder was a student taking film video classes. She saw an ad on Craigslist about filming a video for a new adventure board game and book. She answered the ad and got Mr. Leonard. Mr. Leonard shared his desires to film children naked and what he wanted to happen to the children. Angela looked up Mr. Leonard and found out that he was a 290 registrant. Angela Wilder did what we would hope every citizen would do. When you see something, you do something about it. Unfortunately, in today's world, many people will not do the right thing. They will not make the call. They will not see someone who's getting beat up and make a phone call. They'll see a DUI driver and not make the phone call. They'll be a witness to a crime in a crowded area and not step forward. Martin Luther King Jr. once stated, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter." Angela Wilder was not silent. She called the police, and from there was connected with Detective Avis Berry and Detective Christina Rhoda, superstars in their own right. Miss Wilder agreed to do the stuff that occurs in movies. She went undercover. She, with Detective Rhoda and Berry's help, made phone calls and recorded Mr. Leonard and his inappropriate desires. And in the end, she agreed to go to his home and meet with him to go over his plans. Armed only with a special Starbucks coffee mug with a camera and transmitter, she went into his home and met with him for hours as she showed her nude photos of children, anime porn, and shared his manifesto of molest with her. Angela, not a trained officer, but a college student, was a master in getting Mr. Leonard to share his criminal plans, but with a cost. Mr. Leonard brought up her son, brought up ideas of how he would cover for her, and also subjected her to seeing things that cannot be unseen. Because of Angela Wilder, Michael Leonard was caught. He was charged with 12 victims that were able to be charged, but his known toll of victims was close to 20 kids, and young people, some as young as 5 years old. Many of those survivors and family are here supporting Angela today, and I thank them for their testimony and their bravery also. Mr. Leonard went to trial, and of course, the victims must testify. The twist in this horror novel, though, is that Mr. Leonard decided to be his own lawyer. The children had to be subjected to cross-examination by their molester. But evil is no match for the truth, and each child came and described what he had done, including those from 25 years back. And Angela Wilder had moved to another state. She came back. And even with health issues where she needed the assistance of a walker at the time, she came to court and stood up for justice and for the victims. Mr. Leonard, when he talks to you, leaves a horrible shadow, kind of a filth upon you. And he did the same to Angela as cross-examiner her in court and made her, as she told us later, feel almost like one of his victims. Mr. Leonard was convicted of 41 counts of child molestation and sentenced to 775 years to life in state prison. DNA, cameras, investigative genealogy can solve many crimes, but many in the future, as it has always been, will require good people, good citizens to speak up, good citizens to speak out, good citizens to help bring justice. Angela Wilder is that person. District Attorney Thien Ho, I present to you, and I'm proud to present to you, Angela Wilder for the Outstanding Citizens Award. But you can if you want.
I just had it for you.
Yeah, please.
Thank you. Sometimes in life, a situation is brought to your attention that you know you're the only one who can help. Those situations are never without fear, but without fear there can be no courage. I am eternally grateful to the men and women who dedicate their lives to the pursuit of justice. I am grateful for their trust in my ability to get the truth despite my lack of formal training. And I am especially grateful to Detective Christina Rhoda for taking the time after the trial to call me and make sure I was okay. These men and women are heroes, and I'm just glad I could help.
Now I would like to invite Supervising District Attorney Casey Newton to present and introduce the next recipient.
While we're getting organized, I love this ceremony. I come to this even when I'm not presenting because it's so inspiring, right? So many friendly faces. This is the friendliest crowd I'll probably talk in front of all year. And it's interesting. Chris talked about evil in his presentation. I'm going to talk about it too, but there's no evil in this room. Friendliest group of people you'd ever want to present in front of. And for that reason, the friendly reminder to move things along is in serious jeopardy. But today I'm here and we are here for Miss Twanna Lucas. And Twanna, it's an honor to tell your story and thank you for trusting me with it. In the fall of 2016, Twanna made the difficult decision to end what had become an abusive relationship. And on October 15th, 2016, Twanna returned home from a work outing to find her mother, Christine Lucas, stabbed to death in her apartment. Christine was wearing a church t-shirt representing her ministry work. Within moments of that horrible discovery, Twanna made another one. Her two sons, 20-year-old James Farrell Jr. and 23-year-old Marquise Brown, also a father of two, had also been stabbed to death and were lying on her apartment floor. Marquise was wearing boxer shorts, and James was in his room. Her abuser was the perpetrator and had fled the scene. Twanna had a choice at that moment. She could have curled up in a ball on the floor and never moved again, and nobody would have faulted her for it. But she didn't. Instead, she ran across the street to the fire department. She remained there while the impersonal processes of law enforcement began to take over her entire world. And I think about that a lot. But I think the most about the quiet. The silence that confronted Twanna as she entered her apartment. Our homes are the place where we're meant to feel most alive with our family, with familiar sights and familiar sounds, and those were missing that horrible day. Twanna's ordeal did not end the night of these terrible murders. She assisted law enforcement. She broke the news to her family. She endured media scrutiny. She waited and wondered if the person responsible would ever be caught. And later, she agreed to a lengthy interview where she detailed the relationship she had with this person piece by piece. An incredibly painful experience. And when he was caught, she waited patiently. And during that long wait, she held her entire family together. In just one day, one single day, I watched Twanna organize her family members by phone and text and email. I watched her appear in court, stand strong in front of her attacker, and console distraught family members who were overcome with emotion. And then she went back to work. That's the kind of person Twanna is. I've watched her pray. I've watched her deal with family health crises. I've watched her cope with the unexpected loss of other family members. And I've watched her provide comfort to countless friends and family, all while maintaining her faith and focus on what was ahead. There were numerous delays. She prepared for our case to end only to learn that the defendant's attorney had passed away, and we had to start the whole process over again. We switched judges. I think we've been in every courtroom in the courthouse. Twanna dealt with the uncertainty of this process for years. Finally, last year it was over. Almost 6 long years of waiting ended with 3 consecutive sentences with life without the possibility of parole. That conclusion would not have been reached Without the support of our victim advocate, Aminel Dorsey, and the diligent efforts of Detective Susan Curtis, along with numerous other officers and detectives of the Sacramento Police Department, who completed a thorough investigation and a dogged pursuit of this suspect, which ended halfway across the country in Biloxi, Mississippi. And when they found him there, and they told him they were from California, here to pick him up, he said, "I don't want to talk to anybody from California." And we brought him back. I've been a prosecutor for a long time, but it wasn't until I met Twanna and heard her story that I saw acts that were truly meant to murder a person's soul. That's what this was about. These crimes were intended as a message of, you hurt me, I will hurt you. A sick, demented message that was meant to isolate her, to leave her wrapped in silent despair, to try to take her past and her future on the same day. But he chose his victim poorly. Because what he didn't know and what he couldn't understand is that Twanna's heart and soul were protected and unbreakable. It was protected by her family and protected by her faith. But people who only understand fear and hate can be broken. And in the end, when it came time to sentence this person, he was broken, reduced to a husk, a shriveled husk of whatever he was before. He was hunched over. He couldn't even raise his head to address the judge. And off to an anonymous future. Well, he'll never be in control of anything ever again. And here we are. So now I need your help. Twanna needs your help. She is one of the most selfless people I've ever met. But today, and this time, she needs something just for her. Dark times are going to come. Sorrow, pain, loneliness are inevitable. But we have a great power in this room. And Twanna's presence here, just the fact that she's here standing with us, is why we have this ceremony. Evil took its best shot, and she is still here. She is our hope. She is our perseverance. And she is why Christina Lucas is still here with us, and why James and Marquise are still with us here as well, with her spirit. And it also means that we can be here fighting too. That's what she means to us. So when District Attorney Thien Ho presents Twanna with this award, I need everybody to cheer. And I want you to do it loudly and not politely at all. I want you to get up. I want you to tear the roof off of this place. Let's take the silence and isolation Twanna must have felt on that horrible day and replace it with our voices and our cheers. So if she ever finds herself back in that silent space, she'll hear us, letting her know that she's not alone, that she was never alone, and that good people in our community are loved and supported by all of us. That is our message. And before we have Mr. Ho present the award, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Aminel Dorsey, our victim advocate.
This is for all of the survivors today. I'm going to invite Natasha down as well. When a crime comes to an individual, they're not prepared. When crime comes to a community, it's not prepared. When crime comes to our homes and tries to steal our children's innocence, sometimes we're not prepared, but we've got to hold on to hope and the blessings that justice will come. When crime comes to an individual, you're not prepared. When crime comes to a home, you're not prepared. When crime comes to an individual, you're not prepared. You've got to find the wings of a butterfly You've got to have hope and blessings that one day justice will prevail. You've got to find the strength to rise. Battered, but I'm not broken. Wounded, I will heal. Heavy the load, the cross I bear. Lonely the road I trod, I dare. Shaken, but here I stand. Weary, still I press on. Long are the nights, the tears I cry. Dark are the days, no sun in the sky. Yet still I rise, never to give up, never to give in against all odds. Yet still I rise high above the clouds. At times I feel low, yet still I rise. Hello, courage. Hello, having the courage to wear the device that helped to catch the pedophile. Hello, courage, when you get a diagnosis that you don't know what to do with. Hello, courage, for all of the survivors that have shown up in court and told the perpetrators to pound sand. And thank you to law enforcement and advocates and prosecutors and our allies. Thank you for having a heart similar to our sister Twanna and those in this room. Hello, courage, and thank you, and remember to wear your heart wherever you go. And still, you will rise. You will rise. Sometimes I'm troubled, but not in despair. Struggling, I make my way through. Trials may come to make me strong, but I must endure. I must hold on. Yet still I rise, never to give up, never to give in against all odds. Yet still I rise high above the clouds. At times I feel low, yet still I
Tin, I now present to you Miss Twanna Lucas for this year's Outstanding Citizen Award. Come on, come on.
write some stuff down. First, I want to thank DA Casey Newton, Amanel Dorsey, and Michelle Husbands for honoring me for this award and standing with me through this tragedy. I could not do it without the man above, and also my right hand, my sister Vicky Hill, standing beside me. She kept me focused on what my mom taught us, to stand strong. We were Tina's girls. I thank my family for being here with me, and I love you all. And thank you guys for just standing there with me. And you know, my mom was a woman of God. She was a pastor, a teacher, and I stand here in memory of her and my two boys. And she made a list. She had a list that of goals that she wanted for the family. One goal was for me to graduate. And May the 18th, I will be graduating with my AA.
Before I bring up the next person that's going to do the introduction, I do want to say that if I ever had the honor and the privilege to try another case in the courtroom, I'm going to make sure that Amanel does part of my closing argument. Because I can tell you the jury's going to convict after that happens with her spoken word. Thank you, Amanel, and thank you so much for the beautiful music. So now I would like to bring up Sonia Satchel, who is going to present our next recipient.
I would like to invite Jorge Cruz down. Hi, Mr. Cruz.
How you doing? Nice to meet you too.
So, Mr. Cruz was nominated by Deputy District Attorney Denise Halstead. And while she would love to be here today to present this award, Denise is currently fighting the good fight on behalf of another victim and is giving closing arguments right now. But I did have the opportunity to work with Denise in the adult sexual assault unit while she tried the case, and she told me a lot about you, Mr. Cruz. I remember how impressed she was with you, how she admired your courage, and was thankful that people like you existed in the world. You see, Mr. Cruz was at a local park with his mom and his 2-year-old daughter. And in the park, there was another woman, a woman he had never met before, a woman he didn't know, who was also there with her 2-year-old daughter. And what was to be a nice day for the kids to be out and enjoying the park, it was interrupted. There was a defendant sitting in the median of the street and had been yelling incoherently. Mr. Cruz had noticed him, but thought he was kind of far away until he wasn't. When the defendant crossed into the park, the lady and Mr. Cruz decided it was time to leave, time to take their children away, time to keep them somewhere safe. As the victim went to get her stroller, which was between the two play areas, the defendant charged at her. He knocked her to the ground, he shoved his hands into her shirt, grabbed her breasts while wrapping his legs around her arm and neck, continuously trying to reach into his pants while yelling at her, and she screamed for help. Mr. Cruz didn't know her. He could have left. He had his daughter there with him, and he could have left. It was just as easy for him to not get involved. It was just as easy for him to justify that he was protecting his daughter. But that is not what Mr. Cruz did. Mr. Cruz got involved. Mr. Cruz sprang into action, ran across the park, tackled the defendant, pushed him off the victim, and held him down. The defendant resisted, and he was left with no choice but to sit there and physically detain him until police officers arrived. When officers arrived, he was taken into custody, and the defendant was repeatedly yelling that all he wanted to do was have sex with the victim. Mr. Cruz saved a woman that day, but he didn't stop there. When he was called to testify, he did. He came in, confronted the defendant, and because of him and his efforts, he saved a woman's life, saved her from trauma, and held the defendant accountable. Thanks to Mr. Cruz, the defendant was sentenced to 4 years in the state prison. Thien, I am honored to present to you, on behalf of Deputy District Attorney Denise Halstead, Jorge Cruz for this year's Outstanding Citizen Award.
Yeah. Thank you guys for having me. Just want to say, this is all because of Denise and the DA's team. They're the true heroes. I don't think I did anything special. I'm just was right place at the right time. And thank you so much. Thank you guys.
I do want to take a moment to recognize, you can see that George has a tremendous heart. And that heart shows through in everything that he does and he says, and but for him, that would have been a tragic day for somebody. So thank you again, George. And now I am going to ask Deputy District Attorney Carolyn Massengale to come up here and introduce the next series of recipients.
Christina Pearson, Michelle Nielson, and Rhoda Kitchen. In all the cases I have done, this is the most horrifically premeditated, with vulnerable victims, and the defendant was in a position of trust. He was their caretaker. I don't know how you get over it. I don't know how you get past it in life. I think it would break me. I think I would be broken. These are the words of the trial judge, the Honorable Ernest Sawtelle, when he sentenced the defendant, Gregory Harms, for the crimes he committed against these two women, Christina Pearson and Rhoda Kitchen. We are here today to recognize these two women because they didn't let the defendant break them. They refused to be broken. They advocated for themselves when no one believed them. They told the truth despite being told they were crazy. And they overcame physical and emotional challenges in order to tell a jury what had happened to them. However, their journey, their story could not be complete without Michelle Nielson. Michelle was the final piece of the puzzle in revealing Gregory Harms for what he truly was, a true wolf in sheep's clothing. I am confident that if it hadn't been for Michelle, we would have more victims as a result of Mr. Harms. In 2016, Rhoda had a pulmonary embolism where she then suffered cardiac arrest and a brain injury. It caused her to go into what was called a locked-in state, a condition that left her unable to move her legs, her arms, or her jaw. But despite being in this condition, she was alert, even though she had no ability to communicate. She was then admitted into the ICU of a hospital where Gregory Harms, a nurse, was assigned to provide care for her. but he did everything but provide care for her. On 3 consecutive nights, Gregory Harms entered Rhoda's hospital room and raped her. He would go into her room, turn off the machines that monitored her breathing and her heart, and then rape her. Unable to move, unable to speak, unable to defend herself, Rhoda could do nothing to stop her attacker. However, Rhoda refused to let Gregory Harms break her. What Rhoda did is she began memorizing every detail she could. Her hospital room, what he looked like, what he did and how he did things. So when she finally could tell somebody, she would. And that's what she did. About a month later, Rhoda, who had a tracheostomy at the time, which is why she couldn't speak, it was removed. And she told hospital staff what happened to her. And no one believed her. They told her she was likely suffering from something called ICU psychosis, or that she was under the effects of heavy medication. But that didn't stop Rhoda. When she was discharged from the hospital, she requested her medical records, not once, but twice. And when she received them, she went page by page through them, taking notes and taking down the names of every male staff member that had provided her care. She then took those names and did social media searches until she found the face of her rapist, Gregory Harms. Now, unfortunately, at that time, the case could not be made, and it went nowhere. That was until 2019 with Christina. Christina was admitted into a rehabilitation hospital after suffering life-threatening injuries from a motor vehicle accident. She had 2 craniotomies, and she was broken all over her body. She had a broken pelvis, broken spine, skull fracture, broken clavicle, and a traumatic brain injury that left her with paralysis on the left side of her body. However, Christina was still alert. She knew what was going on, and she still had the ability to communicate with one hand, her right hand, where she could give a thumbs up and a thumbs down. Now, when Christina went to that hospital, she was unaware that this wolf worked at that hospital. And on day 3 of her stay, Gregory Harms was assigned to provide care for her. Again, he did everything but. What he did do was gather information on her. He knew the severity of her injuries. He'd been provided with a summary of those injuries from the night nurse on the shift before. He knew that she had one working hand. So what did he do with that information? He went to a nearby supply closet at the hospital, obtained a wrist restraint. He then went to her room, restrained her only working hand, and sexually assaulted her. Unable to move, unable to scream or speak, unable to defend herself, she couldn't do anything to stop this man. But this time something was different. And the defendant didn't expect this. This time we had Michelle. Michelle was a respiratory therapist working at the same hospital that Christina was at. And she was assigned to Christina's care team. She was there at intake and there the day Christina was assaulted. Now, initially when Michelle went to provide Christina care that day, she noticed that the door to her room was closed. So she waited a few moments before entering. And when she did enter, she noticed something wasn't right. The curtain around Christina's bed was partially pulled over. And as she got closer, she heard a muffled moan, which she later described as a muffled scream coming from Christina's bed. She then got closer and saw the heart monitor that was attached to Christina that showed her heart rate was extremely elevated. But what really caught her attention was that Christina was pulling at her right wrist, and Michelle saw that there was a restraint on it. Michelle immediately confronted the defendant and asked why she was restrained, to which she could provide no good reason. She then went to Christina to find out what was going on, and the restraint was removed. She then found out, as Christina pointed to her hospital brief, what was going on, and that's when Michelle knew. And she never left Christina's side after that. She continued to communicate with her, continued to find out what was going on, and then again confronted the defendant and told him that she was going to report him. And that's what she did. Now, Christina and Michelle stayed while law enforcement was present, despite the fact that the defendant had even given Christina medication that made her sleepy, and it was difficult for her to communicate during her interviews to law enforcement. Now, this case was referred to the district attorney's office after Christina's case, and we filed a case, but we only filed it with Christina because we didn't know about Rhoda. That was until after the arraignment, I was sitting at my desk and I got a call from an investigator in our lobby who said there's a woman downstairs saying she too had been assaulted by Gregory Harms. So I went down there and it was Rhoda. Rhoda was still fighting for her truth, still advocating for herself, police report in hand, and said, this man did this to me too. Now, Rhoda, Michelle, and Christina testified at the trial against Mr. Harms. They were present for the jury's verdicts and present for sentencing. The unimaginable brought these women together, but their shared experiences each make them extraordinary. We'd like to recognize Christina and Rhoda today for not letting Mr. Harms break them, for continuing to advocate for themselves and fight for their truth despite the most horrific conditions. And then Michelle. Justice would not have been achieved in this case without Michelle. We recognize her for following her instincts, following her gut, and knowing that something was wrong, being observant and being vigilant, and fighting for a woman who could not at that time fight for herself. So thank you to all of you, and at this time, District Attorney Thien Ho, I'm presenting to you this award, Christina Pearson, Michelle Nielson, and Rhoda Kitchen.
First of all, I want to thank Carolyn for this award. I feel extremely humbled and honored to be receiving it. Ready. To my family and friends who are here today and supported me through all of it, through the whole 3 years. I love you, and thank you. To my boss management team who's here today to support me. A special thank you to Brian and Glenda, who, for the many office visits and boxes of Kleenex. Before I forget, in addition to Carolyn, I want to thank criminal investigator Laura Chase, who hopefully is on Zoom right now, who was a huge support through this whole thing, through various text messages, emails, phone calls, so much support and encouragement through it all. To Rhoda and Christina, you two were the voices for so many other women that I believe were out there that couldn't have a voice or didn't even know that they had to have one. You two fought like hell to be heard, and you are truly the heroes here today.
Hi, I want want to say thank you to Carolyn for listening and for pursuing the case. Michelle for being the one who stepped in and actually saw everything and decided to use her as a voice as well. And for Rhoda for spending so many years thinking you were in this by yourself. You know, without these women, I don't think we would be where we are right now. And I've got my husband and my children that were there through everything, my biggest cheerleaders. But in the end, this wasn't for me, it wasn't for Rhoda. This was for our children and other people's children so that they never had to go through anything like we did. Because if it weren't for them, I would never have continued with this case. It was 3 years of nothing, but it was literal hell. So again, I'd like to say thank you to all of you guys.
First of all, I would like to thank Carolyn for believing me. And also I would like to thank my father. He's my rock. He's the one that's been through me through all this. And I just want to say, praise God, we got him. He's in prison. Amen to that.
Truly amazing portraits of courage. And now we are going to present 2 additional awards. But the award is what we call the Beacon of Hope Award. And I'm going to go off script for a moment. When we talk about the Beacon of Hope, what is a beacon? It is a light that provides guidance. It is a light that gives inspiration. It is a guide that leads us to safety. And so it is fitting that the first recipient this year of the Beacon of Hope Award is going to go to my colleague and my friend and my sister from another mother, Quirina Orozco. And to present that award, it's going to be Supervising District Attorney Chris Orr.
I'm going to make you come up here. You can bring Jose if you want. I got some pictures, so. Hopefully. I'll begin, and there we go, perfect. Tim and I must have been on the same page on this literally, because my first question is what is a beacon? A beacon is a lighthouse, something that protects us from danger, something that protects us from hitting the rocks, something that shields us and guides us through dark times. Before GPS, ships would go out to sea and be guided through the fog, storms, and rough seas by that light. The beacon that get them to a safe harbor and to a safe place. Quirina Orozco, you are such a person. She is our beacon of hope. Desmond Tutu once said, hope is being able to see that there is light despite all of the darkness. We're here to celebrate that beacon of hope in Quirina and to recognize her. We don't always see the beacon when times are tranquil. The lighthouse on the shore is still there when there are blue skies. What makes Quirina a beacon of hope is Quirina's story. Quirina's story is one of hope. Since she was a little girl growing up without privilege and prosperity, living in a home where domestic violence was real, and where her likely trajectory was one not destined to be a decision maker or a person that would be entrusted with the law. Quirina was in a situation where if there had not been a change, she would likely have been in a cycle that we as society, we'd say we'd want to break. She was in a neighborhood where there were gangs and drugs, and Quirina's future was clouded. not supposed to cry yet. But someone, a teacher, a counselor, noticed her and recognized that she had potential. Recognized, to quote a song, an old song, got to get out of this place. And with a push and a prod and guidance, Quirina, earned her way to Cal Berkeley. In her world, hope was not present, but at Cal, Quirina found hope and opportunity. Graduating from Cal, she went on to work in the White House. From the White House, she went to Harvard, and then back to Cal Berkeley to get her law degree. And it was not until Quirina was a deputy district attorney did she find her true calling. And truly, a DA in the child assault unit, Quirina has given so many victims of crime and their families hope, inspiring them to believe that there will be a better day, working for justice for her victims, taking a personal interest in their circumstances, giving them hope that the system that sometimes is not fair is fair for them, inspiring them to be strong, to stand up, to tell their truth, and to have their day in court and be with them even after the verdict. In the child assault unit, it is more than just putting the child up on the stand and asking them what happened. A child will not talk, will not communicate, and will not be able to successfully get through that trial if they don't trust their prosecutor. Many of the kids that we help have no faith in the system, no hope that someone will believe them or that they can trust us. Many of us have reached out to ask for help. Many of them have reached out in the past, asked for help, and then they've been rebuffed or ignored. To be a child assault prosecutor, you must put off that light and that hope and trust that the child will know is genuine. And like the lighthouse on the shore, you guide that child through the process. Q is that beacon. So many children have been guided by her light. When tough cases come to the door, where there's only the word of the child and some slight corroboration, or where the child has lost faith in the system, I look to Q. Q is there making home visits. She'll get down on their level. She'll be real with them. And she has the passion to get that child through. A year ago, almost exactly, a case involving a young woman, 23 years old, who had been sexually assaulted years before, came into the office. She had recently been diagnosed with terminal cancer. This case was nearly 6 months before Quirina's own discovery of cancer. This young lady wanted to be sure that this molester would not harm another child. There was one prosecutor for the job. I assigned that case to Quirina, and she guided this child through a hearing and helped this child have closure, holding this man responsible. That woman's moral compass was aligned right, and Quirina was the DA to help her guide that ship to shore. Quirina gives children hope that the system that is not fair will be fair to them. She inspires others to be strong, to tell their truth. But Q will stand up for those who can't or won't stand up for themselves. Quirina recently had a case where the victim had been molested in years before. The mother and victim had moved to LA, working a job that would not allow mom to take the time off to come up to Sacramento. Q was not going to let a molester get away because the mom couldn't get off. She worked with another award winner here, Detective Ruben Pena, and coordinated with another agency to fly in a police plane down to pick up this woman, bring her all the way up to Sacramento, and have her testify. She stayed up late to greet the plane, meet them at the hotel, put them at ease, give them their expectations, and show up and help them through the next day. In true Quirina fashion, she was juggling all that while also juggling a vote at the West Sacramento City Council. Despite wearing so many hats, she made sure the victim and the mom were heard. That victim was still so fearful of her molester and had concerns of her own immediate life, she recanted her statement. And despite the evidence that showed the molest was true, she said it was not. Quirina would not let justice slip. She brought home that verdict with all 18 molest convictions. 18 without the victim even testifying about what actually happened. Sometimes you have to bring hope to those who don't even know they need it. With her leadership, she ensured a family who was likely always looked over was given justice and put first. A teammate of Quirina's told me that watching Quirina balance slaying dragons, which is what we call holding the child molesters accountable, with mothering her boys amongst the countless other plates she balanced, she has shown that it's possible to excel in life in both in and out of the courtroom as a trial attorney, a teammate, and a parent. The job that Quirina does at the DA's office is a full-time job, but Quirina does it with all the incredible skill and so much more. And in that, she has an extra job. Since 2016, she's been a member of the West Sacramento City Council and is a force to be reckoned with. She is real and wants real solutions. And when you look at her resume of accomplishments in West Sac, it's amazing how they interrelate with her work as a DA. Quirina provides hope and opportunity in West Sacramento. An incredible example is her work in founding West Sacramento Kids Give Back. This is where local businesses, community members, and parents and organizations put together a group that collects donations, but rather than adults collecting the donations, she has kids collect the donations. And kids make the packages, and kids give the packages back. So it's not adults, it's kids. Because Quirina realizes that if you can embolden others to do the work, you will have a much better community. She's not the only, Quirina's not only the beacon on the hill, the lighthouse in the dark times, organizing the events. Thousands and thousands of care packages have been given out because she's got others to be involved doing the work and inspiring them and making tomorrow's leaders. She's stoking the fire for that light and teaching others to be the light too. During COVID, she started West Sac Girls Give Back, giving young teens leadership opportunities by having them organize, collect, and distribute women hygiene packages to needy girls in West Sacramento, giving out 500 to 600 of those during just a short period of time. The difference she makes multiplies her light and her beacon when she empowers others to stand and help through the tough times. I loved, as I was preparing this presentation, I go on a website of one of the groups that Quirina is associated with, the chair of the executive board of the Yolo County Children's Alliance, which she's been a member of for nearly a decade. And when I go on that webpage, I see this. Because all kids need a little hope. It just interrelates with what she does on a daily basis here. She does it over there. We know that Quirina helps provide that hope. She does it by being in the trenches. She comes up with ideas and empowers those others. Prior to even being on the city council, Quirina got Disney to build West Sacramento's biggest playground park and the largest one Disney had ever underwritten at the time. Q wanted it in West Sac for an underserved community because Q recognized that building hope is developing the kind of kids that will build better communities and better citizens in the future. Other ways that Quirina has done work is through school drives, yarn drives, school supply drives. She sponsors 6 Little League teams, 1 comp soccer team, 1 jazz band, and somehow, amazingly on the weekend, volunteers at the food bank. When I spoke to her good friend, Mayor Christopher from West Sacramento, he told me how Quirina inspires folks to do the right thing. Her style is not like a politician. She is someone that wants to know the story from the people. She has a belief in people that shines through. Hope is her main goal. For Quirina, she figures out how to take hope, aggregate it, organize it, and translate it into action. Quirina believes people want to do good, and she provides the avenues for them to do it. Her Downtown Streets team in West Sacramento that she convinced the board to institute was a plan where she implemented with the West Sacramento board to get the unhoused community in West Sacramento to invest in themselves. They pay the unhoused community to wear bright orange vests to work cleaning West Sacramento. And by doing that, they provide dignity to those individuals by giving them something to do and having the community recognize that they are part of the community and working for the community. Evidently, this was a untested project, but Quirina was passionate about it, and she wanted to make sure that we weren't just giving out money, but we're giving something for them to do, but also have the community recognize that these are part of our community. So she again empowers even hope with the homeless and unhoused. We're here to celebrate. So from building new playgrounds to fighting for better communities, Quirina provides hope for those who don't have it. We're here to celebrate Quirina and hope that she brings. Of course, the albatross in the room is that Quirina is in the fight for her life battling cancer. And yet, if you know Quirina, you know that cancer is just a bump in the road for her. When she was diagnosed, she did not want to give up her trial load. She did not want to leave her victims hanging. The day she was diagnosed, she said, I have to go make it to the SAFE Center to go do a SAFE interview. And her team's like, no, we've got this covered. Quirina was the light on the hill, is that person that will guide the ships to shore, and you have many, many more ships to guide in. Quirina sometimes has pondered out loud, am I getting these awards because I have cancer? And the answer is no. This is our George Bailey moment, our George Bailey Day. It is our community reflecting on how much of a difference our life would be without you. And you have done so much. It's unimaginable to think what our life would be without you. And so sometimes when the storm comes, we recognize the importance of the people we have around us. We celebrate Quirina today for her past work, her current work, and her future work. Current work, yes, while still battling cancer, she's still working on cases, doing intake, attending meetings and fundraisers, organizing priorities to focus on, and she's doing her best work right now by working and being with her family also. And her sons know that she's Wonder Woman, making her the Pokemon card with the hit score of 99.9 for Cancer Beater. When it seemed her annual Christmas gift gathering was in jeopardy because Q was too weak to organize it, the woman who aggregates and inspires hope did it again. Her legacy of an inflatable Santa lives on. If this can't inspire hope, I don't know. I tried to get the video. There's literally like a 30-second video of this inflatable Santa Q dancing. Look it up on the internet if you can. Her co-council members and citizens stoked the fire for Beacon and rallied to carry on the gift drive that she had. You don't fight cancer alone, and those around you, Quirina, are prepared to stoke the fire to keep that light burning. When others were down about your diagnosis, Q provided light with pictures of her working out, getting ready, still pushing to do all that she can do to try to normalize things. But there are dark times. Quirina wanted to be the beacon to us all that will guide that boat to shore. Emily Dickerson once wrote that hope, it is something that encourages us, each of us, when we go through tough times, when we see aches and we need to help others. It is something within us. It is something that we can give to others. It is something that continues to inspire ourselves, and probably more importantly, it inspires others. Hope can outlast the most difficult conditions. It provides comfort and solace. Hope can burn the harshest of storms and the coldest winds. Hope is constant and consistent with us. And when you have hope within us, the best gift we can give is passing it on to others, to have the quest to inspire others in their lives. The seas right now are rough, but we get our hope from you, Quirina, and your community is helping provide the fire to keep that beam lit bright. There may be a purple intermittent beam in Sacramento, but in West Sacramento and above the DA's office, there is a constant beam, and the beam of Quirina Orozco, our beacon of hope, will shine on. District Attorney Thien Ho, I present to you our beacon of hope.
Thank you for letting me take your time this morning. It's an incredibly emotional ceremony, and there are so many amazing people that I have the great privilege to applaud this morning. I've been with our office for almost 18 years now, which is hard to believe. And what a blessing. It's hard to believe that it wasn't just yesterday that a young Bruce Chang and Michelle Furtado, who's now Restrepo, and Aline Centine, Dave Bonilla, Aaron Miller, Matt Chisholm, and soon after us, Omar Singh, also known as Bluto, came just moments after us, and we walked through the doors at 901G, not knowing what kind of adventure we would soon embark upon. In this room, I stand with my mentors, many of whom who have retired from decades of service in the DA's office. I see Nancy Cochran back there, and Rob Gold, Paul Dernberger, Anne-Marie Schubert, and my other colleagues who I have had the great pleasure of still working with, and that's Chuck Gonzalez, who, by the way, I forgot to mention him when I was sworn in, and I still regret that till this day. I also am privileged to have members of the West Sacramento City Council who make me so proud to serve, standing in the back and in the crowds, and colleagues from our local law enforcement agencies who I've had the great privilege of working with. And I also want to mention that this morning I messaged Kate Carlson at the Public Defender's Office, which she's over there, who once gave me a necklace that said, "Be the change," and it was on a penny inscribed that she had made, and I still wear it to this day. It's a privilege. I know it was a long introduction, and I thank you, Chris. You humble me each day. You have the heart of gold, the spirit of an angel, and the mind of brilliance. And so to work with you is one of my greatest honors. And a special thanks to Thien Ho, who called me a few weeks ago to tell me that under his leadership, I would be honored today. And this is a place that I've called my home for almost 2 decades. So that meant a lot to me. Thank you, Thien, for today and for everything that our office has been to me. I would be remiss if I didn't say that I have my phenomenal husband, Jose Yepes, here. He's not only dedicated nearly 29 years of service to the public through the Sacramento Police Department, but also he is an incredibly important part of my life and the lives of our children. And I stand here strong and vibrant and capable because that man carried me through some of my darkest moments and encouraged my baby steps and tied my shoes, literally, because he knew that good things were down the road if I could just learn to walk again. There could never be a show of gratitude where how I can express how thankful I am. Many of you have been kind of a secondary family to me over the years because we've found a way to shield one another from all the trauma that we've endured. We hear the most horrendous things from our cases, and we absorb the feelings of hopelessness and sadness that our victims bring with their stories. And through that, we've bonded as well. And I just got to say that even though we have borne the brunt and the burden of the trauma and have that cross to bear on our shoulders, we always wake up and go back in each day. And we do that because we have a purpose and a commitment to serve. And we have the hope that with each day that passes, that we leave this world just a little bit better for other people. And to just be of minute significance, even if we're forgotten, even if it's at a cost to ourselves, we still are ready to gear up with our swords and slay again. You know, time means something a little different to me now. But I also believe that what's coming is better than what is gone. As I've often remarked, I believe that each precious moment gives us an opportunity to reinvent ourselves and rebrand our mission. We all are traveling through various chapters of our lives, right, Michelle? And each opportunity gives us a new moment to press a reset button and start a new day with a new mindset, knowing of what's really, really important, not the minutia of every day-to-day thing we do, right? Because each day will pass without us even knowing what happened. But really, knowing what's important and finding connection with one another, learning the capability of laughing pretty hard at yourself, because I've had to do that just recently a lot. Being willing to fail without judgment, being strong enough to leave the past behind, and having courage to share our most painful stories with vulnerability many of our recipients have today, and making a habit to smile at complete strangers. Being bold enough to wear that red dress, and finding a way to live our greatest versions of ourselves unapologetically, because we only get this once, and time waits for no one. My prognosis is not something that any of us would have expected, not even me. I mean, I'm titanium in my mind. But I also was built to overcome, and I've done it before, and I have high hopes of doing the pattern all over again. And of course, this time I have a very powerful opponent that gets to work round the clock when I have to rest. But even though I've watched this enemy take my friend Sally, and our Katie, and our Josie, and our Mariah, and Madison Neola, who was a victim of brain cancer, who fought for her truth because she didn't want her abuser to live his life having the opportunity to be a predator for anyone else. She was not going to keep that secret. She was going to tell it. And even though we had to wheel her in a wheelchair so she could tell her story, she did, and she died 3 months after the verdict. But I think about, in a way, that all of those amazing souls are still here with us, right here, right now. And they are helping to bolster my competitive spirit. If you know me, I'm competitive. And, we need the fuel to power forth despite our stories, despite our narratives, and we need to recreate those. We need to fan the flames of the fire that light that beacon, all of our beacons. And that will help me fight my best fight in a trial that I'm told I'm not going to win, but I beg to differ. So I'll end by saying that I just want to share one story with you. As Chris mentioned, I was born to a teenage mom. She was 16 years older than me, and we had our trials and tribulations. I mean, we do trials here in a different way, but for us, it was a life trial. And there were lots of times when we would get evicted from our place, or she would get in a relationship that wasn't very healthy, and there were times when we would stay at motels in West Capitol Avenue in West Sacramento, and they were the dingiest, dirtiest, and cheapest, and that's what we could get into. And I still remember till this day that there was a water cooler in one of them, and it was blowing cold air, but it was wet cold air, and it stank like mold, and it made the bedspread, which is a flowery bedspread that I can't stay in a hotel room with a flowery bedspread anymore because of that. But you run your hand across the top of it, and you could feel the damp moisture. I recently had to write a 7-minute story of my background, and I remarked about that musty hotel room and how it just stands about 100 yards away from the brand new West Sacramento Civic Center that inside imperiously displays my photograph and my gold nameplate and my beautiful leather chair that says Mayor Pro Tem Quirina Orozco. And it was as if that motel was just there waiting for me to arrive. So that way we could last month make a decision as a city council to turn the motel into permanent supportive housing so that people who are struggling can make their way. So talk about radical reinvention, redefinition, and resetting. The goal is now radical remission, and I can and we can. And when we do, I hope the light from all of our beacons, all of them shine more brightly than ever, and that we can continue doing the hard work of lighting the paths for others. And I will travel with you all if you promise to travel with me so we can love on this great life together. Because, ladies and gentlemen, that's what it means to truly live. So thank you for this moment today.
So Q, when you come back and try that first soccer case, I know that I, along with many people in this room, will be sitting there in that front row cheering you on. Okay. And now I'm going to introduce two fantastic victim advocates, Colette and Amino, to introduce the next recipient of the Beacon of Hope Award. So if you could both step down.
Hello, everyone. Each day we walk into our office, advocates and DAs go to court. Victims and witnesses may testify. The process starts. The district attorney's job of seeking justice for victims and their family in our community. Sometimes, but not many, the battle may be lost. But the war on crime remains steadfast and steady. But when the trials are done and the cases are closed, the calls, the meetings, and the emails to victims and their families stop. Our homicide families have been given justice. But the void of the loved one that's lost to a homicide remains. The silent birthdays, the empty chair, the silent grief, the clothing with the scent of the loved one brings many memories and tears. The challenge of holding on to those precious belongings, or should we let them go? Those are the things that when the case is over and the file is closed, we don't see. But we are here today to honor a woman that had a vision, to offer comfort to what we may see is a small thing, a piece of clothing, a favorite shirt, pajamas, jeans. And this vision became what Sharon Dixon called a Remember Me bear. Sharon Bell is a regular guest speaker at the Sacramento Homicide Support Group. Sharon shares her story of loss and hope. Following Sharon's presentation at the Homicide Support Group, the group feels inspired and are moved by Sharon's own personal journey. Sharon Bell created over 4,000 bears, remembers, and she started to honor her son, Jimmy. Sharon suffered her own loss. Her son, Jimmy, was murdered in 1992. Her families and friends were there to support her through her tragedy. And Sharon was so touched, she wanted to help others through their grief. And in 1999, God gave Sharon an idea for the Remember Me Bear, aka Remembears. Sharon takes any article of clothing that a family member may have, again, a t-shirt, pair of jeans, pajamas, and she crafts it into the Remember Me Bear. Remembears are a sweet way to remember the loved ones. It's a way to honor those who are no longer near, but still in spirit. The bear acts as a reminder of special memories, or helps with bereavement by holding silent witness to sorrow. The memory bear helped to ease the pain because it gives a surviving loved one something special to hold on to. Sharon hopes the bear serves that purpose. Her goal is to offer a keepsake that reminds families that the loved one is still here. And as she continues to work through her own grief, her sincere hope is that they find much healing and happiness on the road ahead. The generosity of Sharon's spirit is boundless. She will often craft these beautiful bears at no cost or a nominal cost. She'll welcome strangers who lost loved ones into her home. She shows them incredible kindness by allowing them to speak about their loss as long as they want to and as long as they need to. And she supports them in their grief. For boundless generosity is so much that Amanal and I wanted to nominate her for this year's Beacon of Hope Award. But I want to show you the bear. Let me tell you the story of this bear. This bear is 25 years old. This bear was the pajamas of a victim that I had who was murdered by her son's roommates in 1998. Her sister, at that time, went and gave Sharon these pajamas of her sister. And her sister, Beth, favorite saying was, "When pigs fly." So Sharon put on there, "Flying pigs." When Sue, the sister of the victim, gave me this bear, she said she wanted me to hold on to this bear for our office so that we could share this bear with other families to kind of see what it looks like, to be able to hold on to it. Sue, the victim's sister, passed away a few years ago, and I saw her daughter, and I asked her, I said, "Would you like to have your aunt's bear? I still have it in the office." And she said, "No, hold on to it. Show other families. Let them see the bear. And when I retire and leave the DA's office, this bear will be passed on to Amina." So that we can continue to keep the legacy for our homicide survivors and for their families. And I hate to say I had to have 3 of these made myself when my nephew was murdered in 2017. So I know the hope that it brings, the joy that it brings, and the love of the memories of the loved one. District Attorney Thien Ho, I would like to present to you Ms. Sharon Bell for the Beacon of Hope Award.
This has been such a blessing to me to be able to make so many bears, but it was only possible because the Lord gave me that mission and that ministry to help others that were hurting so deeply. And they've all seemed to save something of their loved one. Some things have been saved for 30 and 40 years and they didn't know what to do with it, but it was so important. So when God gave me the idea for Remember Me Bears, I wanted to honor my son that had been murdered and honored the other victims and other family members that were hurting so bad that they just wanted something to hold on to. So as I started making these bears, I made one and gave it to somebody, and then that person gave it to somebody else, and somebody else wanted one. And so as of this last week, I've made 4,400 bears. Thank you. When I started this, I had no idea. I thought, oh, I'd make one for a family or a friend, and God has just turned it into a blessing for me to be able to help other families. I get to hear their stories, and it touches your heart so deeply that they get that bear and they just hug it and they smell it and they can sense their loved one. And it's not a bear that you can buy in a store. It's a bear that comes from only your personal belongings of that loved one. So when Amanel said that she wanted to present me with this award, I didn't know what to say. But in the same week, God gave me a scripture that just touched my heart and lets me know that I'm doing what God wants me to do to help others. It says, "But as for you, be strong and do not give up, for your work will be rewarded." Second Chronicles 15:7. And I just feel that it all came together because of God's plan for what he wants me to do. And I just thank everybody for the award. I'm very appreciative and very humbled by it. So, thank you.
As we close the ceremony today, and before we do so, I'd like to invite all the recipients of today's award to come down here for a moment, please.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much.
That's what I'm doing. Before we close the ceremony, I want to recognize that California State Assembly Member Stephanie Nguyen, State Senator Roger Nilo, and the Board of Supervisors, specifically Supervisor Sue Frost, Rich Desmond, Phil Cerna, Patrick Kennedy, and Pat Hume, have also prepared and will honor with certificates of commendation to each of the recipients today. So I was recently in Washington, D.C., and I happened to walk by the Department of Justice, United States Department of Justice. And up on the building, on the side of it, there was a engraving. And the quote was, and I'm going to paraphrase it a little bit, is that justice is one of the greatest interests of humanity. Wherever her temple stands, there is a foundation of truth, a foundation of justice, and a foundation of honor. And when you think about it, the people that stand behind me are the true foundation of our society and our justice system, and they are a true reflection upon us and the goodness that is in this world. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you join us next year in 2024.
stand there, Steve, and I don't want you
Yes.
in front of me.
So,
Did you want
hey, can you grab me, take a picture?
Okay.